In today's video, we are going to be looking at the hunt path. Of course, from the title and thumbnail, we are going to be specifically looking at the evolution or the shift in identity when it comes to the hunt path and what they are capable of. Of course, we're going to be looking at every 5-star hunt character, which funny enough, there is only 4. So even though we do have a limited amount of characters to talk about, we do see a good shift in what they're able to do and what they're capable of doing while still maintaining the hunt ideal setting. So we're going to go ahead and talk about all of these characters. And of course, if you're excited for this type of series for any of the other paths, or you would like me to cover any of the other ones, leave it in the comments below which one you would like me to look over. And if this video does well, we'll go ahead and do that and possibly all the other paths. So make sure to leave a like and a comment on this video, and also a sub if you are going to be enjoying this type of video. So let's go ahead and start talking about the hunt path. Now, talking about the hunt path in Honkai Star Rail, we do get a simple definition of what this path is supposed to be, and it's going to be deals extraordinary amounts of single target damage, the main damage dealer against elite enemies. Of course, this is signifying these are the damage dealers, these are the nukers, these are the characters that will take care of every single person as long as they are the only person. And of course, starting this off is going to be talking about a character named Yanqing. Now, Yanqing is our ice hunt character. Now, of course, from the start of the game, this dude was an absolute monster, and especially looking at the gameplay that I have in the background, he can put in some numbers, funny enough, although he is getting hyper buff, which is, you know, the main thing about hunt. The main thing about hunt is that you are the star of the show, you are the main character of that team, no one else really matters but you, and it's going to be a very apparent thing as we look at every single character. And the main thing that we need to talk about for Yanqing, which is his #1 fault, is going to be his Soul Steal Sync. His Soul Steal Sync is going to be a major buff to him after he uses this skill, which allows him to get crit rate, crit damage, and also a follow-up which has a chance to freeze. This just overall hyper buffs him on top of all the other buffs that he can get from other allies, and this is just going to allow him to do some massive damage no matter where you get it from. His ultimate that gives him a fat ton of crit rate, his skill that does a follow-up attack and does a good amount of damage and has a chance to freeze, and also with his normal attack for some reason hitting 44k in the gameplay in the background. He is just an overall really nice character. The only problem with his Soul Steal Sync is that when you do get hit, you are losing this buff, and this is going to play how we see every other character in the future in the hunt path, because now we are forced to build a team around Yanqing, and this is going to be hyper specialized to characters that can take taunt or characters that can make a really beefy shield, and this requires you to have Fire MC or even Japar. And for Fire MC, it's not 100% reliable. You also have a very minor shield when giving Yanqing that shield, and the taunt can wear off. Say he gets stunned, then it's kind of GG for Yanqing Soul Steal Sync, and he loses a lot of damage this way. Another thing is that without having Japar from your standard banner, you are also losing that option as well, not having him if you didn't get him through standard banner unless you picked him on the 300 pulls. So there's a lot of caveats and cons to rocking Yanqing. He does have a really high damage ceiling with his ultra buffing on himself, and he gives himself a large amount of stats. It's just that these stats have a chance to disappear every single time he gets hit. So that is Yanqing. As you can see, he was the main character. He is hyper buffing himself. He's making sure that he can take out any character by himself. But now let's look at a character that doesn't need as many conditions as Yanqing and can keep their buff on for much longer. Now to talk about our first premium character, which is Seele in the hunt path. And Seele by far has been such an amazing character even from release up until 1.6, and is rightfully so, with her by far keeping her main character complex of having resurgence. And if you don't know, resurgence is whenever you knock down an enemy, you do basically get your turn right back, and you're going to get a nice damage buff on top of it. And then not only that, you are going to get some res pen on top of it with your quantum damage. So this overall just feeds into the, yeah, it's my turn, I'm going to be doing a fat ton of damage, and after I already down one person, I'm going to go for another. And the really cool thing about this is that after you use your resurgence and you kill them with your skill or something like that, you are going to be able to use your ultimate and proc resurgence again, giving you the capability of taking out 4 different enemies at one time. Now, the problem right now, which is a really good thing that we did have this at the beginning, is that instead of Yanqing losing his buff when he did get hit, Seele's is 100% conditional on just can you down the enemy. And with the amount of buffs that we have right now, especially at the start of the game where we had someone like Bronya hyper buffing, giving a lot of different turns to Seele, allowing Bronya to focus on just giving the turn to Seele, letting Seele be able to nuke down the enemies, especially with something like Bronya's ult or Bronya's skill advance forward, which is going to be giving her more damage. She was an absolute beast. And the current moment in the game right now, although she is an amazing character and she's bending the laws of the game, the foundations of the game with the resurgence buff, The only problem is that at the current moment, Seele and Yanqing were the main character complexes. It's only them, it's only what they're gonna do, but they both have their faults. Seele right now is quite literally struggling with her main perk, which is Resurgence, just because a lot of the enemies right now in version 1.6 are having a lot more HP than the usual mob would have way back when we were at the release date. Right back when Seele was able to skill and take out any mob and then use the Resurgence to hit the boss, use the ultimate to absolutely shred the boss, and right now that is just not the case. There's a lot of enemies that can basically tank a ult, there's a lot of enemies that can basically take a skill, and that is really hurting Seele's power right now when it comes to her Resurgence buff, because if you don't take out an enemy, you are not going to get your buff, and that's a lot of wasted value from what Seele has. So to look at what we have right now for Yanqing and Seele, Yanqing had a really nice buff. He had a really nice way to be able to hyper buff himself to make him the main star of the show, and Seele took that idea and improved it a little bit more, allowing her to not lose the buff very easily, but in return she does have to down an enemy. Back then it was very easily, and now it is very hard for her to do so. Now looking at the next character, which is going to be Topaz and Numby, this is where the identity of this path slightly shifted. Topaz and Numby changed the idea of what the hunt path is ever so slightly. You're going to be looking at characters like Yanqing and Seele where they're hyper buffing themselves, where they're giving themselves different rule sets to be able to do their damage, and they also have their buffs to fill out what their damage is. While Topaz and Numby is going to be saying, what if it's our show? What if we're able to buff someone else while we also have our damage output? This is what Topaz and Numby excel in, and this is where the identity of the hunt path changes a little bit. Just because instead of saying this is only my show, we are now shifting into an off-field presence, which is actually very important now in Honkai Star Rail. And looking at what Topaz and Numby can provide, they are an absolute amazing character, of course being the staple of most follow-up attack teams. That's because of the proof of death state, and this proof of death state is a single target debuff, which is going to allow you to get more damage out of your follow-up attacks, and it doesn't apply just to Topaz and Numby where the majority of their moves are converted to follow-up attacks, but it also can give characters like Dr.Ratio, Himiko, Herta, Jingyuin, and so much more a big damage boost, and this will only include more units as time goes on. So as Topaz and Numby right now, instead of them being selfish, instead of them doing the damage on themselves and only them, they are now able to do damage with everyone else. They are able to share the spotlight, give a debuff that's going to boost not only their own damage, but also be able to boost someone else's damage. That way you're able to absolutely shred the toughness bar on a lot of different enemies, or even just give a buff, be a support character for another character like Jingyuin, who is going to absolutely nuke the crap out of whatever enemy you're fighting against. This is a really cool thing that we shifted from a selfish type of character, which I'm 100% down for. I don't think characters like Yanqing and Seele are as flawed because they are doing the damage by themselves and they're the only person that needs to have those buffs. I think that's a cool playstyle, and I think that's a playstyle that many people can enjoy. I just like that we are showing an off-field presence because Topaz and Numby do have that ability to allow characters to boost up Numby forward in the action advanced line, and you're able to do damage while Topaz and Numby's turn is still trying to come up. This is a really cool thing for the hunt path to be able to allow themselves, because instead of allowing yourself to repeat turns like Seele or hyper buffing yourself like Yanqing, why not you're able to buff yourself up to the point where you're doing damage before your turn even starts, and you're also buffing other characters. And besides Topaz and Numby having their own debuff, why don't we look at a character that quite literally masters the off-field presence role while still saying, for the hunt path, this is still my show. For Dr.Ratio being the last character of version 1.6, of course being our hunt character, this is where he quite literally takes the ideal and basically merges it all in one. With Dr.Ratio, we are going to be looking at a character that is going to 100% thrive from buffing himself from other characters, and also shows an off-field presence like Topaz and Numby. When it comes to Dr.Ratio's gameplay style, he is going to be allowing himself to get a massive amount of buffs depending on the debuffs that are on the enemy, and this can come from a bunch of different characters, whether it come from Topaz, Numby themselves, Silverwolf, Pella, Ruanmei. There's a lot of different characters that can work with Dr.Ratio, allowing him to boost his damage even further, and he is still the same ideal or the same basic concept of what the hunt path is. Single target damage that is very heavy and really good for boss shredding. This character is an amazing embodiment of what this is, and having it to where he is non-stop throwing out these nukes that are chalk from his own turn with this skill, then doing a follow-up. He also has an ultimate that does a great amount of damage and allows for other teammates to proc his damage, and this is still his show. He still gets to do the damage off of his turn while he's waiting for his turn, he's able to stack up his energy ready for the next ultimate to keep throwing out those chalks, and little then you know, those enemies are gone. They're absolutely erased. This character is an amazing embodiment of what the hunt path is at the current moment, and I really want to see the playstyle of this path be able to change between I'm the selfish character that wants all the buffs, I'll nuke the character by myself, and then looking at someone like Dr.Ratio or Topaz Numby, where you're able to have that off-field presence, where you're able to still say, this is my show, but I'll include you with it. How Topaz and Numby allow for other characters to boost themselves forward, how Topaz and Numby are able to support other characters, and for Dr.Ratio to allow others to be able to proc your own attacks or to be able to work on other characters' debuffs to be able to boost yourself even more. This is a really nice embodiment of what the hunt path is, and 100% all of these characters are hard hitters. Yanqing can still hit really good numbers with his own team. Seele is able to hold her own in the meta in version 1.6. Topaz Numby is by far the epitome of what the follow-up attack team needs, being able to buff out whatever you need when it comes to follow-up attacks, and is an absolute amazing character, hitting her own damage while also supporting others. And then Dr.Ratio, he is an absolute nuking machine. I love his playstyle. He's a really cool character, and he just allows for everybody on the team to be able to do something. You're gonna normal attack with REHOO, you're gonna normal attack with Tingyun. Oh, but I have Dr.Ratio's ult up, so guess what? You're gonna get thrown a chalk in your face for 100k. So right now, this is what the hunt class is looking like right now. I hopefully will see that we get more different changes in playstyle, and 100% I am down to look at every other path and see how they've changed a little bit, because I've seen a bunch of paths at the current moment while making this one and talking about these characters, and by far there has been quite some changes for the other paths, a little bit more drastic than the hunt path, or maybe a little bit less than the hunt path. But right now, starting with the hunt path in version 1.0 with Seele and Yanqing, and ending it off with Dr.Ratio, looks like a really cool analysis in how the hunt path has changed and how great this path is. Now, I know a lot of people have been looking at this path and saying that this path is lackluster, but I do think if you build the team around them, or you build these characters to a good amount of investment, these characters are just as good as all the others. So other than that, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. Let me know if you still want to watch other videos that are covering other paths regarding this topic. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. See you on the next one, and peace.